History can be made Saturday night in the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, the home of UFC 322. I'm Claudia Bellofatto, joined by my friends Danny Brasco and Shakiel Mahjouri. Guys, we always call it a stacked card, but this has to be the stacked of all stacked cards. I'm so excited for this one, and we've got you guys covered for everything. Of course, the main event with Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev. We've got the co-main plus everything in between, breaking it all down here on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Danny, Shaq, how we feeling? Danny, you and I do this a lot. Shaq, it's you and I's first time together. But Danny, every time I say, this is a stacked card, this is the one, though.
Fire me up, Claudia. This is the card of the year. It's got to be 2 titles on the line and really GOAT status on the line for the women's strawweight and flyweight champions, Valentina and Wei Li. And then so much on the line for the Khabib protege, Islam Makhachev, who is looking to, with this welterweight potential, taking the welterweight championship, have a better career and a better MMA, story arc than his teacher and his protege, Khabib himself. So I think that's something to watch for here in terms of what MMA fans will be saying after the fact.
Shaq, how are you feeling?
I am so excited. You know, nowadays the champions have to vacate their titles when they want to switch divisions and pursue champ status. But ostensibly, these are 2 champ fights in the main and co-main. These are 2 super fights. These are 4 champions basically fighting for gold. It does not get much better than this. Is it one of the most stacked cards of all time? Maybe. Is it the most stacked card of 2025? Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
We're going to get into all of our bets for the entire card, but I want to start with the storylines, just sort of the big overarching stories that we should be looking at. We'll start with this main event. JDM, the dog in this fight. Of course, he's the one defending his welterweight title. You have Islam Makhachev, the former lightweight champ, coming into this one. 18 straight wins for JDM. He's fresh off winning the belt earlier this year. And of course, we're seeing the co-main graphic up there. And you guys let me know back there. Do we have the main event? There we go. All right. 18 straight wins for JDM. We'll get to the co-main, don't y'all worry. Fresh off winning the belt earlier this year. And then you have Makhachev coming in 27-1 record. He's won 15 straight, but of course, he's making the move up. So for that, Shaq, I ask you, what should people be looking out for when it comes to this fight?
Naturally, there's so much focus on Islam Makhachev, and rightfully so. He is arguably the greatest lightweight champion of all time. He's notched the most lightweight title defenses, beating out Khabib, his predecessor, like Danny mentioned, Frankie Edgar, Benson Henderson, BJ Penn. And while a win over Jack Della Maddalena doesn't really give him a firm seat at the GOAT conversation, that's a crowded space, it at least lets him start building that case. He's already arguably the best lightweight, and now he can start doing something in a second division. That is so crucial when you have guys like John Jones and George St. Pierre at the top of the mountain hold. But what I really want to sort of zero in on is Jack Della Maddalena. And cards on the table, I am picking Makhachev to win this fight, but I think there's a lot of disrespect coming the way of the welterweight champion, particularly when it comes to his evolving grappling game. Recently, he's enlisted Craig Jones, one of the top Brazilian jiu-jitsu superstars, and we saw it pay dividends against Belal Muhammad. Yes, he stopped 6 out of 9 takedowns, but that's not most impressive. What's most impressive is the fact that off the 3 takedowns that Belal Muhammad landed, he only averaged a little more than 1 minute of ground control for each of those takedowns. Why is that important? Because when your only strategy against a guy like Islam is, I'm not going to let him take me down, you are toast once the fight hits the mat. But if Jack Della Maddalena can get up over and over again, that's going to discourage Makhachev, that's going to disrupt his game plan, and that is what's going to give Jack the best chance to light up the former lightweight champion.
Yeah, Danny, the way that I phrase this in my mind is, how is Makhachev going to fare against people when he's picking on someone his own size, right? Because you can beat up the lightweights, but now you're up against guys who are just like you. So my question to you is, what do we really have to look out for in this fight?
You mentioned it. The 170 physique of Islam Makhachev might be something to behold because he's been dominant with his tenacious grappling attack, that Dagestani handcuff. I imagine it's only going to be stronger at this 170-pound weight class. But I really like how Shaq laid out Jack Della's grappling improvements because it feels like the floor is no longer lava. So often when you fight a guy like Islam, you just can't hit the mat. But now his newfound grappling confidence, the lack of control time that Belal Muhammad had, I agree, that's the most important part. It's not that he defended six takedowns, it's that he got up all those times and that he never settled on the ground. I think people will look back to that Basel Hafez split decision where he was tested by a kind of unknown grappler and pushed to the brink almost lost on account of his grappling weaknesses. But it's exponentially gotten better after he reversed Gilbert Burns, the jiu-jitsu ace, hit him with a knee late in that fight to steal it, and then really shut down a lot of Belal Muhammad's game. I really think he's entering the peak of his career. He's only 29 years old, and Claudia, you mentioned he began his MMA career 0-2, 18 straight fights since then. Not only are we seeing his MMA game improve, we see the heart of a champion inside Jack Dow, and I think he's going to give Islam a really tough test.
It's going to be a great fight, as we know, but Danny, you said it off the top. The co-main is the one that's getting us really excited. Mount Rushmore is something that comes to mind. Two of the most accomplished women in MMA history. Former strawweight champ Zhang Weili moving up to challenge flyweight champ Valentina Shevchenko. Other than Danny Zhang Weili looking to become a two-time division champ, the bigger picture, what is at stake here for you?
It's really their positioning on that Mount Rushmore, right? Little U.S. history lesson. Who do we got? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abe Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, Amanda the Lioness Nunes is our George Washington. She's the GOAT right now. But Valentina, close second behind her. I think Weili is that third. I'll give Weili the Abraham Lincoln spot, analogy that you thought no one would ever make. But I think Weili, with her 4 title defenses, two-time flyweight champion, strawweight champion, is, able, if she's able to beat Valentina here, she might take her spot or at least make an argument for it. Now, Valentina's got 8 title defenses of her own. She's also a 2-time flyweight champion. But I really feel like the athleticism and the prowess, the just general incredible, the spectacle that Weili puts on. She's an athlete that beats bigger opponents. She just defies the odds in her stature, in her ability to impress when you think she's going to be outmatched in a certain department. And I think she's entering the peak of her game as well. So I think that Mount Rushmore positioning is up at stake. The 2 and 3 spot, the Jefferson and Lincoln spots could be swapped with a win for Weili.
We love a little history lesson. Shaq, what's at stake for you in this co-main?
When I was having this conversation with my colleagues, Brian Campbell and Brent Brookhouse, a very interesting point came up. To Danny's credit, we think of Valentina Shevchenko without a doubt as a Mount Rushmore fighter. But then you ask yourself, what is her signature win? And it's kind of hard to pinpoint it because maybe it's Holly Holm, who came down from bantamweight. Maybe it's Joanna Jędrzejczyk coming up from strawweight. But she lost both her fights to Amanda Nunes, regardless of how close that second split decision was. And when you look through her records, it's the sum of it. The totality is greater than the sum of its parts, right? It's the fact that she's been so dominant for so long, but she doesn't have that one win against a fellow Mount Rushmore level fighter to really hang her cap on. And for her, Zhang Weili is that opportunity, the chance to get one huge win against an A-plus tier opponent. And it's really weird when you think about the fact that she hasn't yet. The reason Amanda Nunes, in part, is our women's GOAT, and I think has a spot in the conversation for GOAT regardless of sex or gender, is because she has beat basically every one of her contemporaries, and both that being in her generation and across eras. Ronda Rousey beat her. Chris Cyborg beat her. Valentina Shevchenko beat her twice. Valentina doesn't really have that win, and I think this is a chance for her to do so.
We only have a few minutes here, but I do want to touch on one fight that maybe is an under-the-radar storyline, Danny, and that's with Blanchfield and Cortez. Of course, this is going to be a rematch. We saw him back in 2019, and that decision there, split decision for Cortez, was very controversial. We heard a lot of it post-fight. So heading into this one, what are you looking out for?
I'm looking for an angry Erin Blanchfield to really just put that narrative to bed. And I think that her game has gotten a lot better since they last met. Now, she actually almost had her in an armbar submission in that initial meeting, but I think that she's going to come out here and show that she's the best Dagestani out of New Jersey here. Her wrestling style is really just pressure-based and difficult. She's got a gritty, hard-nosed approach versus Tracy Cortez, a fighter that's 12-1 in the UFC and improved wrestler, boxer, crispy hands, just keep getting a little bit better. So I think this is going to be a really fun sequel fight that they test each other once more. It could be a close one second time around, but Blanchfield looking with that gritty edge to come in here, I'm expecting her to show out. A little foreshadowing there.
Shaq, quick thoughts on another storyline we should look out for.
Bo Nickel. I remember having a conversation with Bo Nickel, who is one of the greatest collegiate wrestlers, especially when it comes to UFC transitions. 2019 Dan Hod Trophy winner, 2019 Big Ten Athlete of the Year, three-time NCAA Division I champion. And he told me that, by the end of 2024, he should be UFC champion or he should be fighting for the title. Well, that hasn't come to fruition. Such a strong start in his first 6 fights, from pro MMA debutante to UFC fighter in just 9 months. But trouble started with that tough win over Cody Brundage, who I think is like 1-4 in his last 5. He couldn't finish Paul Craig. The last 3 people who fought Paul Craig all finished him. And then he loses to Renier de Ridder against Adolfo Vieira. I think he has a stylistic matchup, but this is really do or die, because unlike Alex Pereira, who lived up to extremely lofty expectations from the jump, Bo Nickel is a little shaky. This is his chance to prove that while he's young in the game, he is developing at a rate that will allow him to at least get part way to where we thought he'd be.
A lot to look out for on this card, UFC 322. We are just getting started. We've got bets for you coming up on the prelims. We've got props. We've got it all. Don't go anywhere. We're right back here on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge, breaking down UFC 322 with Danny Brasco, Shakiel Mahjouri. I'm Claudia Bellofatto. And we just talked about this fight. I want to go more in depth, and we got to give our viewers some action here. Women's flyweight, Erin Blanchfield, a big favorite, just south the -260 against Tracy Cortez. You're going to bring that juice all the way down, though, Shaq. Take Erin by submission at 6-1.
Yeah, I think this is a sleeper pick. I'm surprised the odds are actually this far from it. Now, you can understand why to a degree. Tracy Cortez is one of these sort of sneaky good fighters that we don't think too much about in the title picture, in large part because of her activity. She's only been averaging about like a fight a year for as long as I can remember now. Erin Blanchfield coming off of a decision win over Rose Namajunas. Before that, a decision loss to Manon Fiorot. But I think people forgot why we were so hyped on Erin Blanchfield to begin with. And it's because heading into that Fiorot fight, she was coming off of 4 consecutive submission finishes. You don't see that many reliable, dedicated finishers in this division. I think Erin Blanchfield has a good chance to knock it. At plus 600, I think it's a great pick. And to Danny's point, we talked about in the opening segment, these two met far earlier in their careers. And although Erin Blanchfield lost that fight by split decision, I think she's matured and evolved at a greater rate than Tracy, and she did almost get her in that armbar the first time. Both women, of course, a lot more well-rounded, a lot more defensively responsible, but I just couldn't pass up a small bet at plus 600 on Erin by sub.
And Danny, I know that you have Blanchfield in one of your later plays, which we'll get to, but your favorite prelim, you're looking at bantamweight Malcolm Wellmaker and Cody Haddon. Pretty good price on Wellmaker there for the money line.
It really is. I was expecting this to go north of -200 for a blue chip prospect like Wellmaker, who really looks poised. And I really like how he's presenting himself at this young age. He's only 10-0, very limited experience, but the way he carries himself is impressive. He has tremendous power in his counter hooks, and that check left hook is something to behold. So he's taken on a pressure boxer style fighter in Cody Haddon, who's going to look to stay in his face. Haddon is going to be at a reach disadvantage. He's going to be the shorter fighter, so he's going to have to move forward to enter range. And at times, I feel that Cody Haddon closes the distance a bit recklessly. That plays so well into Malcolm Wellmaker's game, who wants to pull you into a punch, who wants to exit the pocket with one of those check hooks on the way out. And I think he's going to catch him with a big shot. Haddon's a tough guy, and I think he could present some problems if he makes Wellmaker grapple, show some wrestling, make him get back to his feet, and prove that he's got a well-rounded MMA game. But while this fight is on the feet, I should say, Wellmaker is the more dangerous puncher, and I think he's going to land that shot that just adds rocket fuel to his career with potentially a huge knockout win in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, Wellmaker landing 7.2 significant strikes a minute, 62% accuracy clip. Now, it's tough because we have such a short sample size, but again, you would think those kind of numbers with Wellmaker, he'd be a heavier favorite. So I certainly like the value there. Curious what you guys think here in the middleweight with Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop to win by KO, TKO, DQ, or decision at -120. This is more digestible than the money line at -185. All but one of his last 15 wins have come by either of these two ways. And I know that we talk about how scary of a striker is. I feel like we don't talk enough about his ability on the mat and wrestling. 90% takedown defense. Now, I know there's arguments for Roman Kopylov on the other side, and he can keep up to some degree, I think, on his feet. But he has a negative strike differential, and we've been seeing that come to fruition over the last few fights. I think that's going to be the difference here. RoboCop is landing over 5.5 significant strikes a minute. I just don't see him keeping up with that, so I think he either gets knocked out, Kopylov does, or loses in decision. I'm going to take the big favorite, bring that juice down, and give us two different outcomes there. I want to move on to some favorite props, unless you guys had any more favorite prelims. We good on prelims?
We're good, but I will say, because I missed it, Tracy Cortez, 62% takedown defense. So not the most reliable when it comes to staying on your feet if you just needed a little bit more push for that Aaron Blanchfield sub bet.
There we go. All right, plenty of backing there for Blanchfield. Favorite props? I will come to you first, Shaq. What are you looking at?
I have a lot of confidence in Benoit Saint-Denis here, and I understand why, if you look at their recent history, you might be a little concerned, particularly considering that Beneil Dariush is coming off of that win over Renato Moicano. But I think Saint-Denis has really matured as a fighter in his last couple of bouts. He changed camps. That seemed to have spurred a lot of this change. And let me tell you, I am a big Beneil Dariush fan. My coworkers are sick and tired of me saying, what a nice guy, every time that he comes up in conversation. But I have so much respect for his 8-fight winning streak that he had, particularly around 2019, where he scored 4 consecutive finishes, 2 submissions, 2 knockouts, including a spinning back fist. And I thought to myself, like, this guy used to be boring. What the heck happened to him? What's really beautiful about that too is prior to that he was 0-3, 0-2-1 technically, with 2 vicious KO knee losses, flying knee against Edson Barbosa, and then he got knocked out with the knee from Alexander Hernandez, and he thought he was going to retire off of that Hernandez fight. So the fact that he was able to turn things around, beat guys like Tony Ferguson, make it all the way to a title eliminator with Charles Oliveira, I have so much respect for that guy, and more importantly, he shows so much heart. And putting up a guy with a ton of heart against a vicious, vicious fighter like Benoit Saint-Denis gets me so excited. I think Benoit Saint-Denis takes it. He has never gone to the scorecards in victory. I think I'm so confident because Dariush's chin is sort of weathered at this point that I would take him instead of a money line. I take him by KO at plus 155. Now, Dariush, one of the best grapplers in the lightweight division. I don't see him getting straight up submitted, but if you're a little nervous that, I don't know, maybe he gets rocked and then trapped in a sudden rear naked choke or something, you could take Benoit by KO or sub at -110. I think plus 155 is good money there, though. Saint-Denis, literally 15, I think it's 15 wins, 15 stoppages. Most of them are by submission, but the knockouts have really been his bread and butter these days, and especially against a guy like Dariush, who's so defensively sound. I'd say take the KO. But I also want to throw this out there because I feel like a lot of people are disrespecting former welterweight champion Leon Edwards. He's going up against Carlos Praches, who's a vicious knockout artist, much like Saint-Denis. But we've never seen Edwards get KO'd in nearly 30 fights over 15 years. He's a great point fighter. He's very defensively sound. I think he can do to Carlos Praches what Ian Machado Gary did in that decision victory. And this time, Carlos only has 15 minutes to find the finish. So I wouldn't take the money line on Edwards because I'm not that confident. But if you're feeling spicy, take him by decision at plus 290 because I don't see a world in which he knocks out or submits Carlos Praches.
Well, I am feeling spicy. I'll talk about Leon Edwards later in the show, Shaq. Danny, I see you have a few props here, and one of those was Blanchfield by submission, so feel free to touch on that as well. But Kyle Daukaus is a guy that I'm going to talk about later. He's a minus 425 favorite against Gerald Meerschaert. You got to bring that juice down. How you doing that?
Yeah, seeing Kyle Daukaus as a minus 400 favorite is a bit alarming. Consider that this is his second stint in the UFC. This is a guy that got cut from the promotion, but he looks much improved on the comeback hands. He's got nasty power and a really lethal Darce choke. He's known as the Darce Knight. And I think that he can put Gerald Meerschaert, the journeyman grappler, who's certainly always dangerous and slick on the ground, live to pull off the upset with his variety of submission attacks. I just don't think there's that many miles left on the tire for Meerschaert, a guy who's been finished in 14 of his 20 pro losses. Daukaus, on the other hand, has a finish in 13 of his 16 pro wins, and I think that's how he gets it done. Also, looking at the market, last week we cashed big on Joseph Morales by knockout or submission, and the line is moving very similarly on Kyle Daukaus, both the money line, the spread, and the finish prop. So I'm starting to read the tea leaves in the betting market a little bit. Seeing Daukaus as this wide of a favorite is a bit alarming, but I think it's telling, and I think he gets Gerald Meerschaert out of there in this fight.
Anything you want to touch on with Blanchfield, or did we already put a bump?
Jack covered it, really. That armbar was close, and I like the pissed off Blanchfield, the gritty edge Blanchfield, to prove that, this isn't a close matchup anymore. I am the more evolved fighter. I am the rightful flyweight title contender that will be one step closer to that picture. And as popular as Cortez is, she's a solid, tough, hard-nosed fighter. Just think Blanchfield's going to overwhelm her with that, like I said, New Jersey Dagestani wrestling. And eventually, at plus 600, even if it doesn't hit, the odds will be worth the bet because she'll have her chances.
All right, well, we're only not even halfway through the show right now. We're already giving you 6-1 plays, but we have even more plus money coming up next as we run through this UFC 322 card. Come back right here on The Early Edge. Back here on The Early Edge, breaking down UFC 322. Danny, Shaq, Claudia with you. It's time for some plus money. We're going to give you underdogs. We're going to start with parlays, though. Danny, what are you giving us for a parlay?
So we talked at length about Erin Blanchfield-Amedov in the previous two segments. I'm going to make her the first leg of the parlay. Grappling advantage, grappling focused fight. I think she gets it done on the mat. But my second leg to bring this to plus odds is the god of war, Benoit Saint-Denis. And Shaq touched on him a little bit earlier. His pressure style will break you. He's a former counterterrorism special ops fighter, so he brings that heart and that ferocity into the cage. And his MMA game is only getting better. He's a guy that will walk forward and throw body kick after body kick at you until he closes the distance and then gets his hands on you. Now, Beneil Dariush, extremely skilled MMA player, very well-rounded and experienced. And I'm remembering his fight against Mateusz Gamrot, the pressure grappler, who he was able to shut down with his jiu-jitsu scrambles and his low kicks, his savvy kickboxing game. Really kept Gamrot at bay. The difference here is Benoit Saint-Denis is even more dangerous. He's willing to walk through the fire, and I don't think that Dariush can put out enough danger to really stop his forward pressure. So eventually, I think it'll just mount and fold Dariush, whose chin is a little bit worrisome at this point. Yes, he looked very good against Renato Moicano, but Moicano dropped him in the second round, and Moicano had no more gas really in the tank to try to go take that third and decisive round. That will not be the case for Benoit Saint-Denis, whose last time he really ran out of gas was when we had staph infection against one of the best MMA boxers of all time in Dustin Poirier. Since then, I think we can believe him that he was in fact sick for that fight because he's only looked like a menace since, and I think he dominates this one after he just pours on the pressure and Beneil Dariush eventually breaks to it.
All right, nice little two-legger at plus 118. Shaq, what do you got?
MMA betting has gotten so complicated, and that's in part because the sport is so complex and there's so many different ways for a fighter to win or for an outcome to occur. So when it comes to parlay, I'm sorry to my degenerates, I'm going to keep it simple. Take two confident favorites, put them together, try and get some plus money on it. I'm going to take Erin Blanchfield as well for the first leg there. I'm going to take Bo Nickel on the second leg. Comes out at about plus 106. Bo Nickel, I think this is a fight that is perfectly attuned for his strengths. Rodolfo Vieira, one of the most decorated heavyweight Brazilian jiu-jitsu stars of his generation, but he's not reliable on the feet. He gets hit more often than he lands. I think he only has one knockout on his record. And the bane of many jiu-jitsu specialists in MMA are, yes, they are a tormenting threat on the ground. But jiu-jitsu players aren't the most adept wrestlers. Getting the fight to the ground ends up being a weak spot. We see this with so many Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters who make the transitions. They focus so much on improving their striking because they think that is the component of their game that's missing, that they forget about how solid wrestling defense has gotten in MMA. Against Bo Nickel, who we touched on, arguably the most successful collegiate wrestler to make the transition to MMA, there is no chance at all, I think, that Rodolfo is going to take Bo Nickel down. If the fight ends up there, it's because of Bo. I think it'd be wise of him to keep it on the feet. I think on the feet, he has more power. And while he's unrefined, I just don't see enough of Rodolfo. I think we've capped in terms of where Vieira's striking is going to be. I think Bo Nickel's striking is only going to improve. Put those two together, get yourself some plus money. If you want to spice it up a little more, though, we touched on Leon Edwards earlier. I truly only see two outcomes to that fight: Leon Edwards by decision or Carlos Prates by knockout. So if you can shop around and find a book that'll let you do an alternate double victory on either Edwards by decision or Prates by KO, you can tag that along, get yourself plus 218.
I do absolutely love those markets when you only see one of two ways happening. Best market to go to. I want to circle back around with Kyle Daukaus in this Gerald Meerschaert fight. I'm going to go with Daukaus in over 1.5 rounds. Digestible price at -120. The fact that we just saw Daukaus come out on short notice and knock out Michel Pereira in 43 seconds, and he went right at him. He was not afraid at all in that fight. I know that maybe we haven't seen enough and the resume is not long enough and impressive enough, but I think the skill is there. And when it comes down to it, Meerschaert can extend this fight a bit, but he's sloppy with his takedowns. And the age, Father Time is undefeated, 37. People think that maybe that's getting to him. I know it's not old, but in fighting, that can get old. He has 5 years on Daukaus, and he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and they all came in different ways: by submission, by TKO, and by TKO. I just don't think he's going to get finished in the first round. I think it might be a little bit sloppy on both sides, so that's why I'm going to go over 1.5. But in the end, I do think that Daukaus is going to come out with the win. Underdogs. Leon Edwards is somebody we've already touched on. I know he's coming off back-to-back losses. I know he's been a little bit sleepy in those, but you have to remember there was 12 straight fights before that. He defended his title twice before that against Usman and Colby Covington. There's a clear path to victory. He has to get this down on the mat. Prates is going to win in the striking battles. We know that. That's what he does. And I know that he can get the takedowns. We saw it against Usman and Covington. I think as long as he can do that, he can win this plus 155. That's the way I'm going to go. Prates wants that first round knockout. That's what he wants, but I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to get there. Shaq, I'm going to come over to you. You're going with Kopylov. I don't love that because you're going heads up with me, but convince me. Tell me why.
I am so sorry. Look, I'm just as sketched out as everyone after the Paulo Costa loss. However, he is the more technical striker. He is a knockout artist. Rodriguez, I guess, lives and dies by that RoboCop or HoboCop name. He's marching forward until one of you short circuits. To your point, Kopylov struggles with pressure, but I just think Rodriguez is too defensively irresponsible. I think Kopylov has been working his grappling defense a lot, at least to not get taken down. I don't love Kopylov as a pick, but as an underdog, I'd be willing to chance it a little.
All right, we do got to go to break. Danny, I know you have a dog. We'll get to it on the other side. Dog from Danny, main event, co-main. It's all coming up next on the Early Edge. Breaking down UFC 322. Back on the Early Edge UFC 322. Danny, Shaq, Claudia with you. Time to get into the meat, the good stuff, the co-main, the main event. Before we do that, though, I do want to give Danny the floor for your underdog. We didn't get to it. Dog play, what do you got?
And man, I want a guy with that dog in him. Give me Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal at plus 120, who's fighting Pat Sabatini, a guy that he actually beat 7 years ago in a very close split decision outside the UFC. We know Sabatini's grappling game is top tier. His pressure wrestling and his arm triangles, his submissions are awesome from top position. But that's the thing about Chepe. He never settles. He's great at the scrambles. bat out of hell fighting style, and he wouldn't let Sabatini control him in that first fight. Just no matter what he did, Sabatini had mount twice, Chepe reversed him, and ultimately I think if he keeps this fight on the feet, his volume striking and his tenacity will win out in what should be a competitive fight. But I like Chepe as a dog for sure.
All right, had to fit that dog in there. Now we will get to the co-main. Shaq, I'll come to you first. We talked about it off the top. Mount Rushmore is what comes to mind. Two of the most well-rounded and best fighters in general, but certainly for the women. We've seen the Shevchenko money come in, but certainly some respect for Zhang Weili making the move up here. A lot of people seeing value with her. What is your play for the co-main?
So I know you two are seeing value in her, and I feel like you're gaslighting me here because I'm feeling really good about Valentina Shevchenko notching another successful title defense and breaking her tie for all-time women's title defenses with Amanda Nunes. Valentina, there's a reason she gets compared to Marvel's Black Widow. She just screams like a lab-created soldier. She has basically zero weaknesses. She might be the most well-rounded fighter in MMA. She can knock you out. She can submit you, albeit most times she's taking you to the scorecards. And that's just because she's so defensively responsible. If you look at the striking defense stats, 62% in favor of Shevchenko versus 54% for Zhang Weili. And not only is Shevchenko so sound defensively, but because she's so well-rounded, she makes it really hard for her opponents to get into their rhythm. If you want to pressure her forward, she's going to take you down. If you're going to take it slow, she's going to light you up on the outside. And once she gets you on the ground and is on top of you, she is so hard to get off. We've seen those crucifixes. Something that Zhang Weili has also employed. Now, I will give Zhang a lot of credit. She has evolved a lot. Her wrestling has developed strides, really catching up in a lot of ways to where her boxing is at. But I think we have some rose-tinted glasses because of the level of competition that she's been facing at strawweight recently. Speaking of rose-tinted glasses, keep in mind, 2 losses to Rose Namajunas. So I think the size difference paired with just how well-rounded Shevchenko is leans towards the champ. I'm going to take her by decision. I don't see her getting the finish, so you might as well get her at plus 155.
We're not gaslighting you, Shaq. We're not toxic here. Me and Danny would never do that. But Danny, tell me why you're going offo.
Man, I mean, I think Shaq alluded to it well with the wrestling discussion, right? Valentina, as savvy as she is, I think she has the best fight IQ in women's MMA history, has been in some close fights as of late. We remember her split decision win over Tayla Santos, a split draw after she was submitted by Alexa Grasso, and then a 48-47 win over Manon Fiorot, in which she really needed to use that wrestling to get the job done. I don't know if that'll so easily be done against Zhang Weili, a fighter who just took out Tatiana Suarez, who was sort of the boogie woman in that division, the grappling phenom, who also had a size advantage and a physique advantage on her. I don't think Valentina will necessarily hold that over her because skill for skill, it's going to be tough to argue against Valentina, but the athlete that Weili is might cause some problems. Her strength is tremendous. Her speed and her output, I think, will be too much for Valentina in terms of the judges' scorecards. If we're looking at it in a close fight, Weili will be the more active, busier fighter who's moving forward more often. And I don't think Valentina can control her on the mat. After what I saw against Suarez, 1 round, and she made all the adjustments she needed to then dominate a prolific grappler for the next 4 rounds. Weili may be reaching her peak right now, and I think she's going to beat Valentina. I like her as an underdog on this card, Claudia.
I'm going to go right in between you two because I think we all believe this is going to go the distance. Odd makers think it's going to go the distance. That's juiced at minus 225. There's so much strength versus strength. We've talked about Zhang Weili working on her wrestling, which was sort of the downfall for her, but she's fixed that. You got to look at the last 3 fights. Those were won by unanimous decision. 4 of Shevchenko's last 5 fights went the distance. So I do think this comes down to the judges' scorecards. And to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, I'm just going to go with the 5.5 with Zhang Weili. I do think she's going to do enough, like you said, Danny, with the pressure, with the pace, really pushing her opponent to get some respect enough to where she can cover with the 5.5. Let's move on to the main event because, of course, this is the one we've all been waiting for. We've got Jack Della Maddalena defending his welterweight title against former lightweight champ Islam Makhachev. We talked about the storyline at the top of this, but the real important thing is what action we've got, Danny. So what do you got?
It's going to be tough to convince people to go against maybe the greatest fighter in MMA right now, the pound for pound #1, looking for greatness, 2-division champion. But I think Jack Della and still is very likely, and at plus 230, not very likely, I should say at plus 230, but is more likely than the odds might suggest, because Islam Makhachev, as amazing as he's been, it's going to be hard to take anything away from him. He has had a lighter schedule, I'd say, in terms of his the way his opponents have come into the fights, in terms of like Moicano, 6 hours notice he took that fight on, right? Volkanovski, the second one where he hit him with the head kick, Volk took that one on short notice too. With a Jack Della full camp preparing for him, I have question marks about what happens if this fight plays out on the feet. Jack Della's southpaw boxing is perhaps the best in the game. He rips punches to the head and body so smooth, and he makes you pay for missed takedowns. That's the main thing that I took away from that Belal Muhammad fight, is that if Islam Makhachev, who certainly has a different wrestling style than Belal, but still, if Makhachev is unable to take him down and he ends up in the clinch, he could be eating elbows, uppercuts, and those nasty knees. For every moment that he does not succeed with his grappling attack, Jack Della will be looking to make him pay. And flying in Craig Jones and Alex Volkanovski to help him train for this fight might give him that extra edge, the familiarity from Volk knowing how this guy is going to approach him, to really at least force this fight on the feet for 3 out of the 5 rounds. I think Jack Della can make it a close one and, based on damage, pull away. You're going to be seeing maybe a lot of control time from Makhachev, but a lot of blood on the face as well. And judges will be asked to score what matters more. We know how the precedent is being set lately in MMA. So if Jack Della is the one with the big moments and the big damage, I think he can win a 48-47 decision. And at big plus odds, that's my bet for this fight, Claudia.
Shaq, I know you're going Oppo, so I'll let you go in a second. I'm just going to say my play for this. I don't want to take a side. I'm going to say it goes the distance, though, and I like this price at plus 130. You talked about what JDM can do on his feet with his striking. The volume is what jumps off the page for me. Landing 6.84 significant strikes a minute, 52% accuracy. But as we know, Makhachev can take it because he has the defense. And I think, again, it's a strength versus strength situation to where we do see these guys battle it out. And it does go the distance at plus 130. All right, Shaq, tell us why you're on the other side of Danny here.
Let me give Danny some due props, though, because if he hasn't sold you on his own, I just want you to know that UFC analyst and renowned coach Dean Thomas is also siding with Jack Della Maddalena. The Craig Jones and Volk influences are no joke. For me, however, I just have I can't help but revere and respect the body of work that Islam Makhachev has had. I think, yes, at times Dustin Poirier's takedown defense was on point. I do think at times Islam was kind of playing with his food a little too much. If you looked over in his corner during that fight, Khabib Nurmagomedov was screaming his head off, like, stop striking and start wrestling, bro. And Islam's just laughing about it the whole time. I think Islam knows his path to victory in this fight. Javier Mendez and Khabib have both said that Jack Della Maddalena is far and away the toughest opponent, the toughest challenge of Islam's career. The camp is taking no shortcuts in preparing him for this fight. And while Volk and Craig Jones's influences are going to make a really big difference here, I'm just not entirely convinced that over the course of a couple of years, they can shore up the grappling defense enough against a guy like Islam Makhachev, who's been doing this his entire life. This is his bread and butter. He is second maybe only to Khabib in that Dagestani style of wrestling. I just don't think there's enough time to see enough maturation in that part of Jack Della Maddalena's game. So give me Islam Makhachev at plus 195 via submission, but I don't say that with a world of confidence. I think Danny, I think Claudia, you all make great points on this one.
I'm trying to see if we can find that two-way result, this way or the other way, and maybe we get a decent price on that one. All right, Danny, Shaq, stick around. When we come back, we're going to rip through our best bets for UFC 322 right here on the Early Edge. You don't want to miss it. We are back here wrapping things up on the Early Edge for UFC 322 with Shaq, Danny, and Claudia. I'm losing my voice. We're so close. We are so close to the end. Danny, talk to me about your best bets on the prelim card.
Well, you guys know I'd like to make my money on the prelims, right? The main event, it's a lot of white noise, a lot of hype. So I try to focus in on the matchups I think are the best value. And Malcolm Wellmaker at minus 148 range, I think is value for a blue chip prospect that I decided I'm going to be backing until he loses. The check hooks, the posture, the poise. I really like what I'm seeing out of this young kid. And I think he can land a big shot and make a name for himself in Madison Square Garden. So I'll certainly go with him on the money line. And I also really like that Kyle Dawkins by knockout or submission. I think he's very likely to finish a guy in Gerald Meerschaert, who's worse for the wear right now, getting up there in age. And the market, like I mentioned, moving very similarly to a bet that we cashed last week, a finish prop as well. I see all the same lines. So the better in me says, tail, read the market, go with it. Give me Dawkins inside the distance.
All right, you got Dawkins, and then you got Wellmaker on the money line.
That's right. Simple and plain right there. Easy work on the prelims. Hopefully we can cash and go into the main card with some money in our pocket.
All right, I'm actually going to take a step back and go to the early prelim. This line is absolutely berserk, but with Beisinger Sasarkaev against Eric Makhachev. But I'm going to take the big favorite to win in round one. Still a little juicy at minus 150, but certainly bringing that down. Him to win by KO, TKO, DQ is minus 295. Don't want to touch that, but it makes sense. All but 3 of his 10 fights, all wins, have ended in the first round, all but 2 of them by knockout. He's 11 years younger. He has the height and the reach advantage. He's a cleaner, better striker, landing over 4.5 strikes a minute, almost 60% accuracy. Makhachev wants to get this fight down on the mat. I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to. So that's the way I'm going to play the biggest favorite of the day. And then I'll just go with my second favorite bet to be Zhang Weili plus 5.5. I felt better hearing both of you talk about your plays. I'm going to sort of just go up the middle and take the 5.5. Shaq, what are you thinking for your best bets?
Claudia, losing your voice, but not missing on those pronunciations. Well done. I would have skipped that first early prelim bet just to avoid embarrassing myself, but you nailed it. Give me Bo Nickel and Aaron Blanchfield. I have a lot of confidence in the two of them as favorites. So much so that I'm willing to put them together, get the plus money at 106 on the parlay. And then Benoit Saint-Denis. I will reiterate, Beneil Dariush, nicest fighter I know, heart of a lion, but I think the chin has just taken too much damage. Benoit Saint-Denis has never gone the distance. I think him at plus 155 by KO is solid odds. I don't see Dariush being tapped out unless he gets his bell rung first. If you think that's a possibility, because BSD does have a lot of submission wins on his record, you could take the combined bet at minus 110, but I don't think it's necessary. Benoit Saint-Denis can crack. Dariush has been hit a lot. Plus 155 on the KO for BSD.
All right, those are our best bets. Danny, UFC is coming to your hometown. You excited?
I would be amped up, but I got a freaking wedding in Chicago to go to. I'm getting sent out to the girlfriend's cousins. I gotta go. So yeah, I would be at the presser. I'd be looking to go, but instead I'll be running to the bathroom to watch the fights while the reception's going on. So pray for me.
Like, where's Danny? He has food poisoning. He's just in there sweating out the bets. Yeah, I love it.
Danny's about to get in trouble with the family wedding politics, airing out his dirty laundry like this.
Yeah, that's my bad. That's my bad. Shaq, what's your plans to watch this?
Oh, I'll be stayed put. I'll have my eyes on the fights all night. You can't miss the best fight card of the year. What are you talking about? Danny, just skip the... You know what? When the World Series was happening, the finals, the entire wedding had the game on. So maybe if you sort of work your way and chit-chat people, hey, best card of the year, one of the most stacked of all time, 2 super fights at top, maybe you can get some, projection, some phones out. Something.
Come on, get the grandmas and the grandpas laying money down on Zhang Weili. Come on.
This is what I do, too. I go to an event and I bring the UFC with me. People are like, we're celebrating his birthday. I'm like, throw it up on the projection right now because UFC is nonstop and there's no way I'm missing the card of the year.
Absolutely. Also, all of these plays and more, every sport we do, NFL, NBA, NHL, it's all going on right now. If you guys haven't checked out SportsLine, do that already. We have Danny, we have Shaq on there. I am putting plays up there. You can catch The Early Edge, our daily sports betting podcast as well. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Scan that QR code to watch right now. For Danny Brasco, for Shaq, I am Claudia Bellofatto. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and breaking down UFC 322. We will see you next time. Enjoy it.